I'm a winner.
There you go.
Woo.
Showed up at the press conference in the glasses, feeling good. Fox Sports senior NBA analyst Ric Bucher joins us now. Rick, what did you learn about the Warriors in their Game 7 win?
That the gravitational pull of Steph Curry can make a playoff star out of anybody. Andre Iguodala is 11 points.
Thanks for stealing my take. Hey, you learned. He came to 10:30. He came to 10:30 Saturday.
I was there at 10:15. I got there early.
Hot take Saturday.
I wanted to get a parking spot.
Oh, man.
No. Look, the combination of the attention that Steph draws and his willingness to share that center stage is the combination. Because there's a lot of stars in a Game 7 like this despite all that attention, would have still been trying to get theirs. And he was very patient and allowed others to shine. Buddy Hield being at the top of that list with 33 points, career high, 12 of 15. He's never had playoff appearances like that before. But I can go back to Jordan Poole getting 30, shooting 9 of 13 a couple of years ago. Or even Andre Iguodala, 11-point scorer for his career. 33% shooter from three. Finals MVP because he shot, in part, 40% and averaged 16 points a game in that finals. Steph's willingness and ability to say, okay, if you're going to pay that much attention to me, I'm going to trust my teammates, is just unique among stars of his caliber. I don't want to go much more beyond that because I think that they've got some work cut out for them when it comes to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But once again, Steph Curry showed that he, first and foremost, when he said, to answer the question, I'm a winner. That's essentially what he is. That is the priority for him, and he shows it in how he plays.
Yeah, I didn't learn anything that I didn't already know about the Warriors. I just knew coming into Game 7, they got more experience. They got superstars. They got guys who've been in this situation multiple times. I learned more about Houston than I did about the Warriors. I learned Houston need another player. They need a go-to scorer. They just couldn't score the ball. They didn't have nobody they can depend on. But the Warriors, I expect this, and this is why they're going to be dangerous in the Western Conference. Because, listen, if you get a series and they play the Wolves and they push it to 6-7 games and you got Curry out there and Draymond with all the experience these guys got, it's going to be trouble. It's going to be trouble because I believe in them. They're eventually going to go on the road where they're 3-0 on the road under Kerr in a Game 7. So if they push this series versus Minnesota to 7, which I think they have to do, Minnesota's going to have to get them out the way first. They're going to have to beat them 4, 5, possibly 6, because if it goes 7, advantage is going to go to the Warriors.
Veteran presence. You know, the veteran presence of the Warriors came to the party. Although the bench didn't do anything for them, right? They scored 3 points off the bench. I think Looney had a bucket and a foul or whatever the case is. But for the most part, the front line took care of business. And when you talk about Buddy Hield's 33 points, but then going into what Paul is saying, Houston's main guys that were supposed to be the main guys, the Dylan Brookses, the Jalen Greens, they didn't show up. And then Sengun, I mean, I don't know what to make of his play, especially at the rim, where he was missing easy putbacks. And when you can't capitalize on certain things, you wind up getting caught in the rabbit hole, much like they did against Golden State, and Golden State came out of there on top. It's just they ran up against the right type of squad that was young, somewhat inexperienced. Now, Minnesota will be a tough out, but if they see OKC in this situation, they're going to kind of face that same young team, even though OKC went a little deeper in the playoffs a year ago than Houston did this year. You're still running up against a young team where you got 3 guys that have all played in the finals that know what to do. And you got other guys that's reserves on this Golden State team that have actually played in the finals as well. So I think when you look at that veteran presence means a lot.
Yeah, Golden State should have wrapped this up before Game 7. Let's be honest about that.
True.
They played around a little bit. I don't want to disrespect Houston because they played a nice series by saying that they played with their food, but they played around a little bit. They let this go to Game 7. It didn't need to. They should have closed it out at home. But this game shows you what the Warriors are capable of and what is scary about them because, to your point, they didn't get anything from the bench. but everybody showed up and did what they needed to do, unlike in some other series that we will get to a little bit later in the show. You got the contributions from everyone across the board at a really high level, and it looked like championship basketball. It looked like, okay, that's that thing the Warriors do, where they just go on these runs, and you can't do anything about it. They're hitting everything, and they're getting turnovers and rebounds on the other side of the ball. That is what is scary about the Warriors. Now, I'm still a little hesitant to go too far with them just yet. I want to see what the beginning of this next series looks like, because Houston's been playing with house money. Like they're ahead of schedule. Obviously, they were a 2 seed, but the Warriors were favored coming into this series. We didn't have super high expectations for them. We really, in my opinion, only got nervous about Houston because the series went as long as it did, which, in my opinion, it shouldn't have. So I think this was a great Game 7 win for the Warriors. They looked like the Warriors of old, where someone else can step up and have a big game. They can hit the shots at the end of the game to make sure that you can't get back in it. And now I want to see what they do moving forward, because the next series, I think, is going to be a tough one for them.
No, I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves as sort of being a supersized Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets didn't have experience. Minnesota Timberwolves do. Across the board, they have more size than Houston does, and they have a better closer, certainly in Anthony Edwards, than anything that the Rockets have. The other two things that to Paul's point, I already knew, but I was reminded of, is one, how good Steve Kerr is as a coach. Because he was sorting through options throughout this series. Ime Udoka, you could say, through many of the games, looked like he was out-coaching him because he was getting so much out of the Rockets. And then we get to this game, and he says, you know what? Let's scrap the Steven Adams hack-a-shack, and I'm going to stay with my veterans, and I'm going to put Kevon Looney out there. I'm going to try to add some kryptonite here by going to Kevon Looney, and I'm going to stick with my vets and let them ultimately get this done. So I think that, and then Draymond Green reminded us what a good defender he is, because I think one of the reasons that you saw, to your point, why you saw Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks not get the same stuff is because Draymond was able to handle Alperen one-on-one. Yeah. And normally during the regular season, watching them, if he got those shots during the regular season, you had to double or crowd him. And they really didn't have to do that in this series. And I was really curious, because I looked at the numbers. Like, a third of his shots during the regular season came from within 3 feet of the basket. In this series, 1/10 of them came from that distance, because he just wasn't able to finish at the rim. He had to take way more mid-range shots than he wanted to.
No, I will say this about Draymond. I noticed this in Game 7 with Draymond, and his stats they're never going to scream at you and say, oh, he had such an effect. When I tell you yesterday, I saw the physicality that Draymond was bringing, because a lot of those in the regular season would have been fouls. The way he was pushing. Two-handed, just two-handed push. So I was like, damn, that's a foul. But Draymond understands the moment. And the rest of the Golden State Warriors do, too. Houston did not match their physicality. They didn't understand that this was Game 7. And I said they coming out like they got another game after this. Golden State acting like they playoff lives is on the line. And I saw the difference. It was clear to me. And I was like, hey, I don't care how close it got. I was like, ain't no way they're going to win this. Because it got to the third quarter, y'all still wasn't matching the physicality. You know where I was like, nah, ain't no way they're going to win
this. You know where I saw that, too? The way Steph Curry was setting screens.
Yeah.
Like, he was getting into these guys. He was not giving in. I'm going to put a button. This little 6'3", 185 three-point shooter is sacrificing his body. That stuff matters in the big picture.
But like Joy said, Houston's ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at them. Great year, second seed, and
a great series. I mean, taking the Warriors to 7, and that Game 6 win was on the road. It was very impressive. So they have a bright future ahead of them. But so what you're talking about, Rick and Paul, that's what Key's saying. Like, veteran presence of understanding this is a Game 7. It's going to be officiated a little bit differently.
Way different.
It's not going to be the story. The refs are not going to be the story.
There was so many fouls that wasn't called.
But even when Draymond realized that he had gotten himself possibly into a little bit of trouble, he went over to try to soften the landing, right? He went over there to make sure that everybody, because he knows that this is the playoffs. I got 4 fouls. I kind of want to, 3 fouls at the time. I kind of want to make sure that, you know.
Stay in the game.
Every time a ref looked at him, he was looking at him, go ahead, do something.
Well, one second-round playoff series is already underway. The Pacers shocked the Cavs last night, 121-112 win in Cleveland. The Cavs were without all-star point guard Darius Garland for the third straight game. The Pacers all-star guard Tyrese Halliburton scored 22 points and dished out 13 assists to help Indiana take the 1-0 lead in the series. Oh, these pesky Pacers.
A little bit more than pesky.
Yeah, bad loss or bad sign for the Cavs, Rick?
Oh, it's a bad sign, and I'll be the first to say that I was sleeping on these Indiana Pacers. I watched them during the first half of the year, and they looked a lot like the team that I saw last year, which I just couldn't understand. Like offensively, they kind of played pretty wild and loose, and defensively, they just weren't there. Particularly Tyrese Halliburton, and so I thought we were just going to get more of the same because I really hadn't seen any dramatic changes in the roster. But it did fly in the face of what I'm used to seeing from Rick Carlisle. And now the team that I'm seeing with the way Andrew Nembhard is playing and some of the other wing players, Benathan Mathurin, Neesmith, like these guys are getting after it defensively. And they were not a very good defensive team, especially at the three-point line. And the Cleveland Cavaliers during the regular season, I believe they were #1 in three-point percentage in the league. Now the Indiana Pacers are shooting it at a high level and defending it at a high level. And if that continues in this series, this is probably the best bet that I see for an upset of the lower seed beating the top seed.
Yeah, the Cavs shot 9 for 38 from three. That's a season low and made threes yesterday.
Then they're gonna win very many games doing that. They did exactly what they should have done, though. I think it's a bad loss. Because you're missing Garland, right? Darius Garland's not there, and I don't know when he's supposed to be back, Rick. But as of right now, it's a tough situation when you don't have your floor general on the floor setting everything up and doing the right things to get people in position. But you got to tip your hat off to Indy. They went into the building and took care of business the way that they were supposed to. They didn't feel sorry for him. They certainly felt like, okay, we can win this game. And you let Donovan Mitchell, he can get his 33, 34 points. Doesn't really matter to us. Let's start hitting our shots. But they didn't have any answers for that depth that Indy put out on the floor with them, whether it was the frontline guys or the next 2 or 3 guys that were still doing their job. Now, when you look at the series overall, I still think it's a 6 or 7 game series. This isn't going to be a sweep. This isn't going to be a 5-game situation. It's going to be pushed to 6 or 7, especially if they get Garland back in time.
Yeah, I think the Cavs are going – this is a bad sign for me because I think the Cavs are going to have to make major changes to the starting lineup. They're going to have to make adjustments. Like, I don't think you can play big versus Indiana because Indiana, if we forget, I'm not sure about this year. Last year, they led the league in pace.
Yep.
And they were the fastest team at getting up and down the court. And if they're going to continue to play at this pace with Halliburton, because I saw it last year versus the Celtics, I was like, man, I know we swept them, but I was like, hold on, this team is dangerous. I think out of the 4 games, we won by double figures once. Other 2 games was by three. Another one little like 6 or 7 points. But I was like, hold on, this team is better than what we thought. And I saw that, and I said, the Cavs might be in trouble, especially if you don't have Garland. If you don't got Garland, your point guard, because the offense looked terrible for the Cavs yesterday. They couldn't get no sets. I'm looking at Indiana run around, getting their sets, make the extra pass. Halliburton out there just leading the break. It just looked like effortless, and it was just like, man, the Cavs waited all year. They was healthy to get to the playoffs. And I say this every year, health is a factor in every year's playoffs. Yeah. You already lost your floor leader in Garland, guy who could get you an offense. You made Mobley. We don't know. He's just ankle, dealing with ankle. And then Hunter.
Yep, DeAndre Hunter with the thumb.
Dislocated thumb.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I think the Pacers are going to take this one.
I think I kind of agree with you. I mean, that health is so important. Like, it's obviously unfortunate because you'd like to see everybody at full tilt against each other and see the best players on the floor, but that never happens in any postseason run. You need a couple breaks to go your way. Yep. Last night, though, was a show of the Pacers' depth and their experience as well. Like, we just keep, brushing over the fact that they were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Like, they do have postseason experience at a really high level, and that going into Cleveland and beating Cleveland like that, regardless of the health situation, is really impressive.
Yep.
All their starters had scored more than 13 points. They had a great contribution from the bench. And Donovan Mitchell, defending them from the three, he was 1 for 11 from three. He had his 33 points, but when you're going 1 for 11 from three, you're setting the team back. And that's how it got away from them.
Long rebounds.
I will say this. I wonder how much playing Miami versus what Indiana had to do to get past Milwaukee set them up for thinking we're playing better or with more efficiency than we actually are. That sometimes you have that easy run and you're just blowing them out. You're thinking, oh, we're playing at a high level. And some bad habits can creep in. It's a shot selection and everything else, right?
Yeah, that's called battle tested. You know, when you go through these wars and these series, it gets you ready for the next, little mini war and series you go through. And when one is easy and it's like, oh, you don't understand the intensity it takes for the next round until you get punched in the mouth. And Cleveland got punched in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it will be a long series, but it definitely was. I'm leaning towards a bad sign for the Cavs also. Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.